We are live captioning our meetings. Please look in the chat window of our WebEx meeting where you'll find a link. Please click on that link to open a web page with the live captioning. At this time, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Maricopa County Community College District Governing Board of January 27th, 2026. For the record, I will call a roll call of the board members. Our student trustee, Ms. Smith, is not here yet, but will be coming. Ms. Butler is also en route. Ms. Davis.
Here.
Dr. Narini.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Present.
Ms. Sullivan.
Present.
Dr. Thor.
Present.
And myself. So we have a quorum of the board to proceed with the special meeting. So we're going to do this twice tonight. So we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance to start with. And I'm going to ask you to stand and join us in the pledge. Thank you very much. And it is a custom and practice in the district that we elect officers annually every year. And it has been my honor to serve for the last 2 years, but guess what? We're going to elect a new president. And I just wanted to say thank you to the board for their help collectively and all of the efforts we've done the last 2 years. I think we've done great collective work. If you think about Prop 486, some challenges we anticipated. And then there were some challenges we didn't anticipate, but I think we've successfully managed to navigate through new changing federal rules and directives, and we are all still standing and still increasing enrollment and advancing bachelor's degrees, as well as our ongoing variety of programs that even as recently as last week, CJ was being celebrated. So I, again, very much appreciate the support we've had both from the staff, but from the board as well. So there are 2 items on the agenda today. The first is the election of a board president. I'm going to open the floor for nominations for the office of president, but I'm going to exercise the prerogative of being the president for a few more minutes and place into nomination Dr. Linda Thor. Second. Please don't say no.
I accept.
Okay, good. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I declare that nominations are closed. All board members in favor of Dr. Thor serving as president of the governing board for the calendar year 2026, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations. Unanimous vote. Thank you, Dr. Thor.
Thank you.
Now, I will also open the floor for nominations for the office of secretary. Are there any nominations, Ms. Sullivan?
Yes, I want to congratulate you on your 2 years of service as president first before I move to the next item, and congratulations to you, Dr. Thor. And with that, I'd like to nominate Ms. Donna Davis to serve as president of our governing board for the next academic and fiscal year.
Maybe the second.
Did I say president?
Yes.
I apologize. Linda, I'm trying to usurp you already. I don't know what to say. So excuse, boy. Phew. Let's go back. I would like to nominate Ms. Donna Davis to serve as secretary of the governing board in the year going forward.
And Ms. Davis, do you accept?
Yes, I accept.
You do. Are there any other nominations for the office of secretary? If not, then I declare nominations are closed. Would all board members in favor of Ms. Davis serving as secretary of the governing board for calendar year 2026, please say aye.
Aye.
By unanimous vote, both Dr. Thor and Ms. Davis are elected as our officers for the going forward for next year. With this being completed, that concludes the agenda for this particular function. We're going to take a brief break for the reorganization of the board. I get to move. Dr. Thor gets to come here. We're going to switch around. And then we'll resume our meeting. I think we're still resuming at 5, correct? For study session regarding the fall 2027 budget. This meeting stands adjourned.
Yay. Congratulations.
Good afternoon. We are live captioning our meetings. Please look in the chat window of our WebEx meeting where you will find a link. Please click on that link to open a web page with the live captioning. I now call this meeting to order. Let the record reflect that all board members present during the special meeting to elect officers are still present. And in addition, Ms. Butler has joined us. Oh, excuse me. And where's? Oh. Okay, well, we'll acknowledge that Jacqueline Smith was with us earlier, and we do expect her back. And we're also missing our student trustee, Pamela Smith. We have one topic for this study session, the fiscal year 2026-27 budget overview. Ms. Bone and Ms. Granil, please begin.
Thank you. Good evening, President Thor, members of the board, Chancellor Gonzalez, members of the Shared Governance Executive Council, guests and colleagues. I'm Leanne Bone, Chief Operating Officer for the district. With me is Kim Granillo, Vice Chancellor of Business Services and our Chief Financial Officer. We are here this evening to talk about the first view of the general fund budget for fiscal year 2027. So thank you for this opportunity to present. And we've lost our visuals. So they're coming back up. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm moving on to the agenda because there's not a lot of content on it. So, so I'll do that while Elsa's pulling the presentation back up. We're going to start by talking about various components of the general fund. Kim and I will tag team this part of the presentation, talking about our priorities and assumptions. I'm on slide 3, Elsa. Nope, I'm on slide 2. Thank you. We'll go over the general fund base and also strategic funding needs. We'll talk about revenue options, and then Kim will talk about the impacts of those revenue options on our budget allocation model that we debuted last fiscal year, and we'll end with next steps. So I will turn it over to Kim to begin with our budget priorities and assumptions.
Thank you, Leanne. One last set of introductions, and then hopefully we can move on from there. President Thor, members of the governing board, Chancellor Gonzalez, members of SGEC, colleagues and guests. I'm Kim Granillo, and I serve as the Vice Chancellor for Business Services for the system. And we are on slide number 3, budget priorities and assumptions. When approaching the development of the 2027 budget, these are the assumptions that were considered and prioritized. As always, and certainly not starting in 26, but kind of doubling down on 26, continuing to balance the general fund budget, again, meaning that recurring revenues equal or exceed recurring expenses, and proposing any adjustments to either or both to make sure that the budget stays in balance. And again, this is the general fund. Incorporate reasonable base revenue increases, such as increases in enrollment that makes sense, and incoming new taxes from new construction. Fund total compensation adjustments to remain close to market. Phasing in additional funding to address shortfall in self-insured medical program that we've been talking about. We'll have a little bit more information, of course, on each of these a little bit later. Preserve or increase the college allocation pool. That is part of the new budget allocation model that we started in 26. Address strategic funding needs, and then reestablish uncollected tax levy contingency. We'll go on to the next slide, please, Elsa. This is really a reminder of what we shared in November. The top half of the schedule is a review of base expenses and increases that don't really require governing board action. And they include accepting or levying property taxes from new construction that should yield or is estimated to yield about $14.5 million. Enrollment growth in the amount of nearly 10.7 million. And just to clarify, this is fiscal year 25 actual enrollment plus fiscal year 26 estimated growth, plus 3% on top of that would get us to the estimated amount for fiscal year 27. So it is compounding since we don't have actuals for 26 yet. The bottom half is ongoing base expenses, and proposed increases in these lines includes salary increases, which is about 3% growth, equaling about 4.2 million, as well as adjustments related to policy manuals. So employee education pay adjustments based on education attainment by faculty and or staff. Benefits of 10.3 million include increases related to those salary increases, along with $6 million for increases in medical benefit premiums. That's where we've been talking about. We are currently not funding our benefit program adequately enough for being self-insured. So this makes a dent in that shortfall. Scholarships and awards is for President's and Chancellor Scholarship, and these are largely related to enrollment increases over time, and that's about $1.5 million in increases. And then this last line that actually has a dollar amount of an increase is 3.2 million for an inflation factor. And for anybody who hasn't been part of Maricopa forever, this is the first time we're actually proposing an inflationary adjustment to expenditure budgets. In the almost 29 years I've been with Maricopa, we've not really funded inflation, and yet the entire system struggles with inflation. So that's why this number is in here. And it is based on about a 2.9% CPI, if that's of interest. The structural imbalance you see there at the bottom, the just over $4 million in parentheses, is just meaning that absent any other changes in revenues, we will need to reduce projected expenses, base expenses by $4 million in order to keep the general fund budget balanced, back to one of our priorities on the prior slide. We can go to the next slide also, please. Employee compensation is our next topic. As of fiscal year 26, this is the last year of our 5-year strategic compensation plan. And yes, everyone has been wondering where the next compensation plan is. Unfortunately, you're not going to see that today, but we're going to talk a little bit about it. A plan has been drafted. However, we realized fairly quickly that we need to look at compensation more holistically, as wage changes and benefit changes all compete for the same limited resources. And looking at compensation changes and benefit changes in two silos is not going to be possible for us moving forward. Those are two really big buckets of resources. So we've regrouped and figured out we need to do those two things together. To help us get to that place, EBAC, Employee Benefits Advisory Committee, and the Compensation Advisory Committee, so the two groups that are looking at those two pieces of the pie, those advisory committees really want to have and need to have employee input to inform what changes to recommend going forward. Therefore, all employees have received a survey to gather interest in the space of salaries and benefits. I believe that went out last week. And has a due date in February. So all employees are encouraged. Anybody who's listening, anybody who talks to anybody else, please encourage employees to complete the survey. Those results will be compiled in February and used by both committees over the coming months to develop the next multi-year plan. So all of this leads to our recommendation, which is the last bullet point on the slide, to develop a 1-year total compensation plan for fiscal year 27, and then use the information gathered and then allow us to focus on a comprehensive multi-year plan for both benefits and salaries and wages together. And that would be something that we would hope to present fall of 26 that would prepare us for the fiscal year 28 budget. So that's the recommendation for that going forward. Strategic funding needs is our next slide, please, Elsa. This slide is a reminder of the strategic funding needs that we first shared with the governing board in November. We have 4 different buckets that you see, especially with the bachelor's degree roadmap shared last fall. There is concern that colleges will not be able to absorb the additional costs associated with existing and proposed degrees. This $3.3 million would help provide ongoing resources for these programs. Student advisors are currently at 772 to 1 on average. An additional investment of 4.3 million would get us closer to a ratio of 600 students to each advisor on average. We have some that would argue that 600 to 1 is still too high, but we have to start moving in that direction, so we have to start somewhere. We also believe that other initiatives will help assist in that advising arena, such as strategic scheduling, furtherance of guidance pathways, etc. So adding advisors is not the only solution to the challenges we have within our system for advising. So this is one piece of that. We're also have for strategic funding needs $6 million for expanded college and high school services. This does support the Chancellor's vision for increasing college-going behavior, can be used to help colleges without an existing infrastructure to support dual enrollment students to implement one. It could also be used to expand Maricopa grants specifically to dual enrollment students. So there are options in that space. Residential faculty expansion supports about 20 new faculty in the furtherance of the updated faculty to student ratio. When you add all of these up, the strategic needs total a little bit more than 16.5 million. Adding in the structural imbalance from the base funding revenues less expenditures brings the estimated funding deficit to about $20.7 million. And with that, I'll turn it over to Leanne to talk about why new resources now. Sorry.
Thank you, Kim. So it's fair to ask why now when we're talking about new resources, which is where we'll be moving the conversation next. What we've done here is looked at our year-over-year resource growth and year-over-year full-time student equivalent growth. So dating back to 15-16, the reason we started there is that's the year that our state funding ended. So you can see in that year that we had really no revenue growth, but we had about a 5% reduction year over year in our student count. So that makes it easier to weather that storm when you have fewer students to provide services for when your revenues are flat. And then kind of moving into the next pre-pandemic phase, we had really flatlined revenues, but year over year reductions again in student population. So again, you can weather that storm because the demand for your dollars is lower than it would be in the year prior. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And so what we see there is an increase in revenues that's really fueled by federal stimulus dollars that were received and really a cliff for student enrollment. So a 15% drop in fiscal 21 compared to fiscal 20 in our student enrollment numbers. So that, again, you can financially manage through that when your resources are stable or even growing and your student population has taken such a tremendous decline. Fiscal 23 is when this story starts to change. So both resources and our student population are growing, but for the first time in this 10-year history, the rate of growth of our students is exceeding that of our revenue. So that's a real change in those trends. You can see the trend lines in the lighter red and the lighter blue. If I didn't say before, red is the resource annual resource growth, blue is the annual FTSE growth. So we've seen a reversal in those trends and a narrowing of the distance between those two trend lines. So that starts to tell us things need to start changing. And in fact, the board did respond in fiscal 24 by increasing tuition by $12 per credit hour, which was a tremendous help, but still didn't, because tuition's 25% of our revenue in the general fund, still didn't significantly change that trajectory of revenue. The other issue that was of great concern at that point is the fact that we had an expenditure limitation that precluded us from bringing in more revenues that were subject to that expenditure limitation. Tuition dollars are not. So it was kind of the only lever we had to pull at the time, and we did, which I think we can look back and be very satisfied that we made a good decision that time. So with the expenditure limitation now corrected, it gives us the opportunity to look at additional sources. Moving on to the next slide, we'll do a little bit of a dive into the year over year, and then we'll look at a little bit more of historical growth in our student counts. So this is year over year growth in FTSE numbers for each of our colleges. You can see we have a 4% average there. That's the red line across kind of the middle of it. However, you know, the truth always looks a little bit different when you look at the details. So we actually here have Gateway and South Mountain experienced growth year over year in excess of 10%. So pretty outstanding growth for those two. The only one on this that shows a decline is Mesa. As everyone knows, Mesa faced a very significant internal budget issue as well as a reduction in their budget through the budget allocation model. So because of that, there was some reduction in their academic offerings, which affected their FTSE, but I will say affected it only really very slightly. Next slide, please. So this is not too dissimilar. This is headcount over the same time and looking at obviously our same collection of colleges. You can still see in this that you've got Gateway that's exceeding a 10% headcount growth year over year. The average here is 3% across our entire system. Mesa still shows that decline, again, for the very same reason. And then unofficially, our fall 2025 headcount numbers reflect a year over year increase of 5%. So that is unofficial, it's preliminary, but I think it goes to show that we can be hopeful that we'll continue to see growth in the coming semesters. Next slide. So going back a little bit more historically, what we're comparing to here is our just barely pre-pandemic numbers. And so a question that we often think about is, have we recovered from that? System-wide, this is the headcount, next will be the FTSE. So system-wide, no, we have not. We're still about 9.5% under that 2020 number. But interestingly here, Chandler Gilbert, Gateway, and South Mountain are exceeding in the last academic year, 25, their 2020 numbers. So we have 3 colleges who actually have fully recovered, and another 2, Phoenix College and Estrella Mountain, who are within 2%. So half of our colleges are right on the cusp or have already exceeded that number from 2020, showing that we've got some colleges who really have fully recovered from the pandemic. And then the next slide, a similar looking trend in FTSE. Here as well, you can see that Gateway and South Mountain have fully recovered their 2020 numbers as well. But FTSE is taking a little longer to recover. We're still about 13.8% under that 2020 number. And I'm going to turn it back to Kim.
Thank you, Leanne. We're going to see if we can give everybody whiplash as we keep trading spots. So Leanne talked about why the need for additional resources now and review the enrollment data. And I want to take just a moment to remind us all of what we've been doing since 2022 in the way of reducing budgets. In 22 through 26, we've reduced our budgets across the system, a total of $34.3 million or 4.67%. And yes, we have increased the base revenues, meaning taxes from new construction, enrollment changes when they became positive, and increased student tuition in one of those years. We also then in the last year in 26, or actually our current year, kept some of the tax shift in the general fund to balance the budget. But at the same time, we've invested nearly $125 million in our employees. So we've done a lot in the last few years while still cutting budgets by almost 5%. So we'll go to the next slide, Elsa, and we'll talk about how this all takes us then to the work of the Advisory Budget Council in 2025. Their work was to inform what you saw in November and also what you are seeing this evening. 8 options to increase revenues were considered by ABC, and the consensus was to forward the 3 that you will see on the next in the next slide. Don't shift yet, please. You'll see in a minute also what the chancellor and ultimately was coming to the governing board. I just want to note that the 3 options are listed in order of preference by the ABC. And so with that, Elsa will go to the next slide. So these are presented from left to right, and the first option that ABC considered, and this is the preference of the ABC, is a 3.2% tax increase. It would allow us to fund our system without directly impacting our students. A little bit later, you'll see how tuition and taxes affect those impacted very differently. You saw a little bit of that in November as well. We're going to update that information too. Full disclosure, ABC was not quite sure how palatable this option would be. So you'll see 2 other options that include options that impact students and taxpayers. Option 2 is the next preferred, as it shares the burden between our 2 funding sources, students and taxpayers, but it does impact students less than option 3 does. This option will allow us to keep our tax rate flat while increasing the levy. So just as a reminder, we levy a dollar amount, and that dollar amount gets converted into a rate. When valuations rise for properties and our levy doesn't, then the rate naturally declines. That's what we're using with the tax shift as well. What this proposes is to not let the tax rate fall and to capture the additional levy generated. Keeping that tax rate flat is about a 1.81% increase in the levy. Option 3 was the next preferred option, as it still shares the burden, but is a higher impact on students. All three of these options would allow us to fund the increases in base expenses along with the strategic needs that have been identified. All of that being said, I am compelled to call out the box you see at the bottom of the slide, which very simply, because it's never simple, states that full restoration of state aid would allow us to maintain the current tax levy and tuition rate. Saying that, I also need to share that the governor's budget, that the executive budget that was released, I think a week ago, 2 weeks ago, did not include operating state aid for Maricopa community colleges. So if you didn't know that yet, that is the case. I'm not sure that gives me a whole lot of warm feelings that they're going to turn around and fund us for operating aid. And our challenge that we have is that we won't know until June, more than likely, what's going to happen with funding unless they manage to get the budget passed earlier. We do need to know for tuition rates by next month, because that allows us to get the tuition, if there's any changes in tuition, allows us to update the system for enrollment that starts opening in March. And then for taxes, if there's an increase proposed in taxes, that will come to the board for action in May. That is potentially the last opportunity we have with which to do that. And again, if the state doesn't pass the budget until June, that's a bit of a challenge and a big gamble for us to wait and see what the state is going to do. One last comment on this. There were certainly questions at agenda review relating to special fees on the tuition and fee schedule that has at the board today for first read. We did do a preliminary look at the special fees on the tuition and fee schedule, and that preliminary look indicates that the vast majority of those fees are accounted for in the auxiliary fund, not in the general fund. And as Leanne answered 2 weeks ago, all of this work we're doing is on the general fund. And really those fees have been assessed to cover the related costs with those fees. We are continuing a bit more research, and as soon as we have completed that work, we will share that analysis with the full governing board. So I just wanted you to know, specifically Dr. Narini, that work is underway, but at first blush, that is what we're pulling away from. So we'll make sure that that is confirmed, and certainly if there is something different, we will share that. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Leanne.
And I think it's my last turn of the microphone. So we shared this slide in November when we presented, and it does just visualize what Kim just said, but I don't know that we can say it enough. So this is state aid support for community colleges in Arizona by FTSE. Maricopa is that little tiny green dot at the bottom. So that's what we're funded per FTSE by the state. The average is in red. So this begs the question, what would we look like if we were average, which is a pretty painful question to ask when you're talking about public education. What would that look like? We'd have $28 million in additional funds. We would not be talking about a tuition increase. We would not be talking about a tax increase tonight if the state funded us at an average level. Enough said probably about that. So next slide, please. So oftentimes perspective is important. We shared a version of this at our presentation in November as well. So just looking at what are the impacts of the two different revenue increases we're talking about. I'll focus on the students first, and I'll focus on the more expensive of the two. So a full-time student shouldering the burden of an $8 per credit hour increase would be foregoing roughly 74 gallons of gas, perhaps a monthly car payment or utilities payment, perhaps a month's worth of groceries. The most burdensome version of tax increases we're talking about for taxpayers, an average homeowner owning a $500,000 home, which is probably slightly above average, but not much these days, that would cost them about 5 gallons of gas, or a few air fresheners or light bulbs. That was the best analogy we had to a car payment or a utility payment, or a couple Big Macs. So just share that for perspective. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about tax history. We're going to talk a little bit about tuition history as well, just to give some additional perspective. This shows in the red, this is our tax levy, the board adopted levy dating back to fiscal 25 or fiscal 15. So you have a 10-year history. The green or the blue area shows our levy limit. So the last time the Maricopa maxed out its levy limit was in 2010. We've been building capacity for the last 10 years. We're currently at about 83 million in capacity, or 11.4% under our maximum levy. And that's in current year numbers. Next slide, please. So we've thrown in here an example of fiscal 27. When we look at these, we've assumed what I'll call the worst case or the most expensive scenario, just because it won't be worse than those things. So you can see that we've had a declining tax rate dating back again to fiscal 2015. The fiscal 27 number, this would be that 3.2% increase. It is still less than all but the last 2 years of our rate history. And our rate has declined from 15 to 26, nearly 29%. Next slide, please. And then this is just a comparison of Maricopa to our peers, our peer community colleges throughout Arizona. So you can see Coconino all the way up to Eastern Arizona. This is the tax rates that each of them levy. Our truth in taxation rate, that's what it would be. That's the method that we've selected in the last decade or so. So that would be a reduction in our rate to make the levy flat year over year on existing property. Puts us at the third lowest tax rate. Interestingly, all three of the options that we've proposed this evening are shown in those blue rows, and all of this would roughly maintain our current placing when compared against other community college districts. Now, these are current year rates, so they could change their rates, so we could be at the bottom, or they could drop a rate and it could maybe fluctuate by 1 or 2. Next slide, please. And then just another reminder of what the average Maricopa County tax bill looks like. It is primarily school districts, K-12 districts, coming in at about 53% of that bill. Next are cities at almost 12%, the county at 11.2%. Fourth is community colleges, us, so that's 10.5% of the tax bill. Next slide, please. All right, so shifting to talk about tuition. So the red line here is the tuition indexed rate. It's at $118 currently. The blue columns are our tuition level dating back to fiscal 12. I did have a question as I was looking through this. Why do we go back to 12 here? I don't know, but the history is nice. So generally we have been below that, but not always. There were a couple years where we teetered right around that inflation index rate. We have been consistently below it for a number of years. The estimate shown for 27 is that rate or the tuition rate that is increased by $8. So the 105 rate that would still bring us in quite a bit below the 118 tuition index rate. And then next slide, please. Okay, so I have to admit I made a mistake on the slide, and then I made another mistake on the slide. But my second mistake was not as bad as my first. So the first mistake was fixed. The second mistake remains. This is our tuition when we compare it against our other Arizona community colleges. Right now, you see us in the green line. So we're in the, I would say, top half of affordability, because this is least expensive to most expensive tuition. If you can ignore the fact that I have Pima colored as blue, and think about the $5 increase and the $8 increase line. So that's my second mistake in the slide, and I apologize for that. But those two lines, the $5 increase and $8 increase, show us where we would be with respect to the other districts with those increases. So we'd be in, I guess, the lower half of affordability. That again does not, we know nothing about what these other districts might do to their tuition, so that could change based on what they all choose to do. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Kim for the last time to talk about the budget allocation model.
Thank you, Leah. I think I made this comment at another time we were presenting, but I said it's amazing how many times you can look at something and then you're standing up here and you're saying, oh yeah, there's another mistake that we missed. So we swear we've got lots of people looking at this stuff too. So anyway, so we're going to talk for a couple minutes here about the budget allocation model. And a couple of disclosures before we move to the next few slides. First of all, they are for illustrative purposes only, because they are very preliminary. It's all based on the revenues that we land on, and ABC is still looking at some of the methodology around the allocation. What we've done is when we look back at 26, it ended up being fairly easy because we were plugging a resource hole still because we were trying to get to a balanced budget, add in a bunch of resources, and we all went, oh, holy cow. So we're working through all of that. I have a level of confidence in what you're going to see tonight, but I just need everybody in the room and everybody watching and listening and anybody who hears anything else. These are preliminary numbers. Please do not go back to your college and plan for what you see on that slide and say, but Kim said later on, because Kim said no. So we'll know the final allocation numbers as we continue to build the budget. I also want to share that while the next 3 slides you will see look specifically at the allocations to the colleges, I need to note that we are continuing to hold the district office and district-wide allocations flat. So somebody had asked a question, well, I don't see anything about where the district office and district-wide are going. It's because they're not going anywhere. They're staying flat. We're making sure that the raises that were granted in 26 are accommodated in their allocations, but it's not intended for us to increase the percentages, but there's just still work to be done. So again, I just want to make sure everybody knows that this is preliminary. We will have more information. If not at our March presentation, we will have more information in April when we present the budget for first read. So with that also, if you can go to the next slide. For this particular iteration, just a reminder too that the college allocation pool in the 2026 budget was $633 million, which is a difference of $43 million. So this iteration for 2027 has the college allocation pool at $676 million. So we've increased that allocation pool by $43 million. I need to be clear that $19.8 million of that $43 million increase is already distributed to the colleges. And you can actually see that in the 26 budget with allocation. Those are the salary increases we did for fiscal year 26. If you remember, and sorry if I'm way too far in the weeds, which I almost always do, we withhold the pool for the compensation changes out of the allocation model because we don't know where they're going to be consumed, because that is all about the action that the board takes. They took it in May, for instance, and that does not hit the actual adopted budget. So, but we want to make sure that that gets accounted for. So that's in that $653 million. What this also shows, or I guess to be crystal clear on this, what this schedule is including, and this the label at the top there, this includes base revenue increases only. So again, taxes from new construction and enrollment increases, and required expenses only. And the required expenses only are those for scholarships and for employee salary adjustments based on policy manuals. So this does not include a mass salary increase. If we were to do that, then that $23 million would be distributed as you see above in the second to the last column. And what you see is that the reductions to the 3 reducing colleges, Glendale, Mesa, and Scottsdale, are about on track with what we saw last year in the 5-year implementation plan. But then you will see larger increases to the increasing colleges. That is the result. And that is because we did not hold back any of the dollars for a salary adjustment, because this one does not contemplate a salary adjustment. So now I want to go to the next slide, because this one does include a salary adjustment. So this is base revenue increases only. So again, taxes from new construction and enrollment increases, and then base expenses, which does include a salary adjustment. So what this is telling us is that if the board does not decide to increase revenues beyond what we can already take, but does decide to grant a salary increase, we will now have 5 colleges that are reducing their budgets. And the 3 that were already reducing are reducing even more than they were before. And then there are very small increases to the colleges that were the remaining 5 colleges that would get increases. The reason why we're sharing this is because this is what we have been doing over the last several years. We've not been adding additional resources other than what we're allowed to without board action, but yet we have been granting salary increases. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear what that impact would be on the allocation model if that's what we decided to do. So then the next version that you'll see, the next iteration, This one is kind of the whole big bang. And so it's based and proposed revenue increases, whatever combination of revenue increases that is around taxes and tuition. And then it also includes funding for base base expense increases, as well as the strategic funding needs that we talked about. So when we run this through the model, what you will see are the three colleges that were reducing before are still reducing. The other 7 colleges are still increasing. So another note about this one is the little asterisk disclosure across the bottom. Due to the 5-year implementation period, this proposes to hold annual reductions to 10% of the total reduction. The rationale behind that, because again, if I take you back to last year when we were talking about the new model, we did a 20% impact of the changes, the increases and the decreases. And we said in year 2, it would be 25% because now you're dividing it over 4 years, 33.33% over 3 years, blah, 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 blah. When we did that, you kind of saw that on some previous slides. One of the things that made us step back and look at it is the rationale for increasing revenues is to fund those strategic needs. If we continue to cut 3 colleges by the same amounts that they were, and we want them to move forward with initiatives and visions that we have, they would be doing it with even fewer resources than they had before. So the idea behind this was they're continuing to plan the reductions that they have been planning for, and then they're going to reallocate a portion of those reductions to help fund those strategic needs. So these are things that ABC is talking about. I am not standing in front of you saying this is what ABC wants to do, because so much of this depends on what we do with our revenue picture. So with that, that's my last slide, although I do have next steps as well. And so next month, February of 24, we will bring the final version of the tuition and fee schedule for consideration by the board. April, we will have first read of the complete budget schedule with truth and taxation public hearing if necessary, and budget adoption in May. What is not on here is in March, we will be back again to do another presentation to update any general fund numbers that we have, as well as to provide some additional information about all the remaining funds. So kind of my wrap up of this before we turn it over for questions is, so we've now reviewed 3 different options around revenue changes. And what we are hoping for is feedback from the board on what you all want to see from us, whether it is about the tuition and fee schedule that will come to the board for action next month, or it's about taxes and what we want to see, either information in March or what we want to see in the first read of the budget schedule in April, because my team kind of needs that information with which to have a budget to deliver to the board to consider. And with that, we're on the question slide.
Board members, any questions?
I have one.
Okay, Ms. Bittersmith, then Ms. Smith.
Thank you, President Thor. I'm not sure which with Leanne, maybe this is a question for you. I'm not, or Kim. So obviously one of the proposals, actually 2 of them, would deal with a potential tuition increase. And if we were to vote on that in February, that sort of then predicates what happens going forward. The last time we did a tuition increase, we had an opportunity for students to weigh in. We had some listening sessions, explanation sessions, where we have short time to do that, but it would seem to me that might be a great opportunity for us to have conversations with students. And you're nodding your head, so I think maybe you're ahead of me. So is that correct?
Thank you, President Thor and Ms. Bittersmith. I would never say we're ahead of you. It is something we have talked about, and I actually talked with Lindsay Wilson this morning because I remembered I needed to talk to her about it. And we believe we can get input from students ahead of, we'd really like to have it for agenda review in February, but at the very latest, we would have it before the February regular governing board meeting. So we are poised to be able to do that work. If we knew better what we were asking them about, we can narrow it down. Otherwise, we can ask them about $5 and $8, which are the 2 options that you saw.
Understood. Is there a role for the student trustee to help you with that? Because the last time we did that, the student trustee was integral in getting those some of the sessions set up. And she's not here to speak for herself. I'm not trying to volunteer her, but she and I spoke last month about having more interaction in her role with students. So she might be a great resource to utilize in doing some of those sessions or giving you ideas of how the sessions could be more effective.
Thank you, President Thor, Ms. Bittersmith. So I will make sure that Lindsay knows to reach out to Pamela. I'm quite sure she probably already had that on her list, but we will make sure that certainly she makes that connection.
Great.
That'd be very helpful, of
Thank
course.
Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for your hard work on the budget. I want to put two things on the table. The first is that I have a suggestion with the box on slide 14, which says full restoration of state aid would allow us to, et cetera, et cetera. My amendment there is that philanthropic capital is another option to avoid a change to the tax levy and to the tuition rate. And I would really like to hear from you all on that point specifically. And secondly, on slide 6, for the strategic funding needs, the total need is about $20.7 million. And the three options that are outlined for us on page 14 are in the $20 to $21 million range. What I want to put on the table is that the expanded college and high school services is a highly fundraisable activity. And so before we assume that the amount that we need to cover is $20.7 million, I would like to hear potentially from the chancellor and you all about a desire to try to raise at least $6 million to meet that. And the last thing I'll say related to, I guess, challenging the premise that what we need to raise is around $21 million is if we look at the second option that has a flat tax rate, that would increase the taxes by 11.65 million. So 11.65 million would enable us to fund the bachelor's programs, fund the student advisors, and fund the structural balance, all of which I think would be really positive. Again, I want to put on the table that expanding college and high school could be fundraisable. And I would want to have more information about the residential faculty expansion, which colleges, so it's 3 million. Is that evenly distributed across the 10 colleges? Thank you.
Other
President.
board member questions or comments?
President Thor, if I may offer a
Please.
comment to the question, and then I'll lean on Leanne and Kim here to answer the rest of it. In terms of philanthropic support to make up an immediate $21 million shortfall, that would be extremely difficult, but that wouldn't mean that we couldn't do it. The problem is, however, is that they often come with strings attached. Pure operating state aid is no strings attached. We benefit from restoration of STEM funding. We've consistently been getting somewhere between $8 and $9 million the last few years, but even that is with strings attached. So we're asking for unattached dollars that can be spent in ways as described here, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to go after the philanthropic support. Most of the time when that does come into the Maricopa system, it is for student aid.
If I may just reply, and I think that's what needs to change. And I think that I know I make these comments quite frequently. I think this is the moment to change the way that Maricopa raises philanthropic capital and how we direct that capital. And I agree that 21 million overall would be a large jump, but I really do believe that a $6 million raise for high school students, a population that donors truly care about, is reasonable for us to discuss and to map a plan for.
President Thor and Ms. Smith, just as a point of clarity, I absolutely hear what you're saying. It's $6 million on an annual basis, though, too. So it's every single year we need that $6 million, and we need it guaranteed because a lot of these services are provided by staff. So, but would love to learn more about that. Thank you.
Ms. Davis.
I would like to know, Ms. Smith, what is the impact of that kind of an effort on our foundation.
So in a previous presentation, there were some slides comparing the number of staff at the ASU Foundation, where I've previously worked, and other organizations. So I can just speak from experience, having worked at the ASU Foundation. A principal giving or leadership giving fundraiser is expected at ASU. A single 1 FTE fundraiser is expected to raise at least $10 million a year. So I would argue that a seasoned leadership giving level fundraiser, 1 FTE, should be able to have a fundraising target. Now, granted, that would again be a shift for Maricopa because the fundraising needs have been directed more towards student efforts and student success. But my take is that 1 additional FTE at a leadership giving fundraising level, and then some analysis around the operational support that that fundraiser would need would be what is required to pull this off.
Any other board members? If not, oh, Ms. Sullivan.
So I'm not going to hopefully confuse my words on this conversation. I would like to support Ms. Smith's position around philanthropy. There is significant work being done, I know, nationally in redesigning and promoting philanthropic models for all levels of higher education that support this activity. And certainly we have opportunity in rethinking or enhancing, maybe that would be a better word, our opportunities in that arena. Now, is that going to be fast enough to accommodate your need for us to support this budget, et cetera, particularly with a $21 million that you're trying, gap you're trying to close now? But it would be, I think, an opportunity for us to ensure that the next time we have this discussion, that that is a firm position of ours to be looking to close the gap financially through these remodels of philanthropy. I know there's a conference next week that is talking about foundation structures in higher education. I don't believe we're sending anyone to that meeting, but to that end, it very much supports a model that Ms. Smith is discussing, and I think we're at the cusp where we need to not just look at board reallocation, which this is doing, but look at the broader perspective. So whatever it takes for us to move into having that conversation and putting that on the table as part of this discussion, I think is imperative. And rather than wait until we get into the next budget cycle, I think it would be important for us to begin to frame that out now so that we can certainly move ahead with that. So that would be my first comment. My other one is I'm very much in support of option 1 when we're looking at property tax increase. I know that a few years ago when we did talk to the tuition increase, we did say that it was $12 and it had been 10 years, maybe 11 years when we did it. And we did say that we never wanted to be in that place again where our jump had to be so significant. But because we have not maximized our tax levy, I think at this stage, it would be important for us to look at that seriously and maximize our opportunity in that space. And as rather than go on in this conversation, that would be my inclination at this point. I know there's some discussion about what we promised in asking for support in 486, but it wasn't a promise in perpetuity. You know, it was, we don't anticipate having to do that the next year. Well, we're 2 years out, we're looking at 3 years in this space. And in that regard, I think good, honest conversations around where we stand would be important. We have just reflecting on this budget, as you look at the red lines here for some of our colleges, whether or not you're getting an increase or not, we're functioning at the bare bones of our colleges. When we're challenging ourselves to think, should we not give and create a new compensation package, we fall behind. So I think it's imperative, again, maybe my favorite word today, to take seriously a compensation package that is constantly going to move us forward. Integrate that, begin to move away from whittling our colleges down to their bare bones, and growing opportunities. So the way I see it and how it's being presented this evening, to me, it falls a lot in the property tax area. Hate to do this on the backs of students. So that's where I stand today. And
Thank you. Before I ask other board members to weigh in on taxes versus tuition increases, could either of you share with us some of the discussion that ABC had that led them to recommend property tax increase only as their first option?
Yes, thank you, President Thor. Really, it was about protecting the students, recognizing that students have all sorts of barriers in front of them, increasing costs, whether it's rent or groceries or childcare, fill in the blank, and really trying to preserve the rate that we currently have and not impact them anymore. I think they found the impact on the student versus the taxpayer. I think they found that information compelling and just found that the impact on the taxpayer would not be nearly as significant. Did I miss anything?
Okay. I very much associate myself with the comments by Ms. Sullivan. And my first choice also would be solely property tax increases. Would other board members like to provide direction?
Would it be anybody surprised if I said no?
Dr.
yeah.
Narini.
Yes, I like that option one very much, and I really appreciate the breakdown of the comparisons, between what it would cost the students versus what it would cost homeowners. And if you have a $500,000 house, then yeah, you can afford one less burger. So thank you for that.
We need the rest of you to weigh in, or we won't have a budget.
President Thor? It's really just another question. What is the and I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure I'm correct. What is the requirement for a truth in taxation publication if we raise whatever rate it might be, property tax?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Thor. President Thor, Ms. Bittersmith, sorry. So anytime we increase the levy more than what we get from new construction, we have to do a TNT hearing. So it doesn't matter if we do 1%, we do 0.5%, if we do 3.2%, we still have to do the hearing. We still have to publish everything. And so it won't matter at that point in time what we do.
So, but in the option 2 proposal, does that trigger a truth in taxation?
Yes.
Even for the shift? Okay.
It's a flat rate, not a levy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I strongly believe that we need to go with option 1. I think that we are on our own here to strengthen our system. It's clear that this state so far, even in times when we had a budget surplus at the state level, we were not added back into operational funding. I don't know what they're doing because we are literally building the workforce for our state. And we have a responsibility to our students to make sure that we keep our tuition affordable. All of these other costs are increasing right now. And we have an opportunity that I think we would be responsible if we take this opportunity to ask taxpayers. It's hard to do that, but I think we need to ask taxpayers to share this investment in our future workforce And I appreciate the idea that obviously we need to continue to ask for, philanthropy, and all of those things are wonderful, but we cannot run a system based on, hopeful dollars. We have to pay actual staff, and we have to promise our students how much tuition they should, be planning for. So that's my opinion, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah,
Dr. Narini?
thank you. And I just wanted to support what Ms. Smith said too, because even though it may not solve this, what's on the paper right now, I don't know of any budget who isn't having a problem. And so if we can start planning ahead so that we can grow, so we can get some more of these initiatives going in philanthropy, I think there are. I mean, what the students and what we produce in terms of workforce, I think there's support for what we do out there. And so if we can support what Ms. Smith says too about, how do we bring this, bring more money into the system, because we can't count on the legislature.
Any other comments?
I guess that
Ms.
means me.
Davis?
It would be great if I could talk about this from my perspective, but I represent a whole district full of people. And my whole district, when I last looked at the number of active voters in our districts, my district had the most active voters. And my active voters would not support either one of these things. And I know that, a long time ago, we were looking at before we did the expenditure limit thing, we asked the staff for suggestions on, ways we could save money. And I, of course, would prefer that for my district. If I were voting, for me, it might be different, but for my district, I have to vote how my community sees things. So I would not support either one of these.
Any others?
I just wanted to follow up. Are you able to comment on the residential faculty expansion?
Yes, President Thor, Ms. Smith. So the residential faculty agreement includes, and has for many, many years, includes a provision about the number of residential faculty each college is to have. It used to be 60-40. That was the ratio of residential faculty to adjunct faculty. It's recently been updated to be a ratio of residential faculty to students. I think it's 1 to 26. Thank you. 1 to 26. So that is in the RFA that comes in front of the board every year for consideration. We are off by, thank goodness I have Patty here. How much is the system off by right now?
Mhm.
Charlie Gilbert. Yes.
Mhm.
Did everyone hear that? Yeah. Spittersmith?
Just as a follow-up question though, because I think it's an important element. Can you go back and repeat the last component about Estrella? And
I sure can.
please.
Yeah. So what we just heard from Patty Finkenstead in the back row is that we are off somewhere between 160 and 180 residential faculty, according to what is in the residential faculty agreement currently. And most of those, or the lion's share of those faculty, would go to Estrella Mountain and to Chandler Gilbert, who are two, as we know, our two most underfunded historically colleges. Historically underfunded colleges. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes.
President Thor, just a follow-up in terms of the student input. I think that's going to be critical for this board to hear a little bit, because to our surprise last time, the bulk of students, now that was a different time and a different stress point and a different economy. So to the extent that we can help and maybe get Pam engaged fairly quickly to get that input, I think that's going to be useful for the board to hear from students.
All right, I'll attempt to tell you where I think we are. Uh, yeah, well, I think a board, strives to have total consensus on important actions. I'm not sure we're there, but what I believe is the consensus is that we're not willing to support tuition increases, but would support the property tax increase. Anyone disagree with that? Does that provide you with enough guidance?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Good. Anything else?
Yeah, so thank you, President Thor. So I just want to be very clear because I also heard from Ms. Bittersmith that we still want student input on a tuition increase. But what I think I'm hearing is that we don't need to propose a tuition increase in February. Is that inaccurate?
President Thor, I think I heard you say we thought we could have some initial student input fairly quickly. Now that may not be quick enough for February, but is that but I think you were already intending to do that. To me, that's critical, and I'm hearing what Ms. Davis is saying. I think the student reaction can make a big difference in this board in terms of, because that's where our interests are, and making sure things are set for students as well as taxpayers. And I think that would be useful, again, because we were surprised last time.
Okay. So
Now, tell me if that's impossible between now and in a month. No.
So, Ms. Bittersmith, I want to make sure I understand. With what you're proposing, then at agenda review next month, you would present us with the results.
Correct.
And based on those results,
I
we'll
think that
either
helps.
affirm or change the direction of not raising tuition.
That's just me, so I don't know where the rest of the board is, but I think that would help the board's level of understanding.
Ms. Sullivan?
Dr. Thor, my only, absolutely, I think that would be good. I'm wondering if in the survey, though, there would need to be some opportunity for the students to weigh into an alternative. I mean, if it's only, are you willing to do a tuition increase and blah, 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 not blah, 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 but that kind of guides people to an answer, as opposed to, is there an opportunity for them to also know that there could be other options on the table? So when crafting that survey, I think that would be important information for the students to have in true disclosure, transparency.
So President Thor, Ms. Sullivan, I think we can work with Lindsay Wilson on developing an array of questions to ask and try to gather as much information as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay, we want to thank you very much for a very informative presentation. This concludes this study session, and we'll convene the regular board meeting at 6:30. Thank you. Good evening. We are live captioning our meetings. Please look in the chat window of our WebEx meeting where you will find a link. Please click on that link to open a web page with the live captioning. I will now call to order the regular meeting of the Maricopa County Community College District Governing Board for January 27th, 2026. We'll begin with the roll call of board members. Pamela Smith.
Present.
Susan Bittersmith.
Present.
Kelly Butler.
Present.
Donna Davis.
Present.
Tom Narini.
Present.
Jacqueline Smith.
Present.
Marie Sullivan.
Present.
And I am also present. Let the record reflect that all board members are present, including our student advisory board member. Before we have the Pledge of Allegiance, I want to comment on the fact that this is a day of great change. First, for those of you who were not here at 4:30, we did elect new board officers, and Donna Davis was elected the new secretary, and I was elected board president for 2026. But certainly that change is very minor to the announcement that we all received from our chancellor today, that he will be concluding his service with us at the end of the fiscal year. We're going to have lots of opportunity ahead to recognize his outstanding service and leadership to the district. But I did want to right off the bat say thank you and congratulations on your new position. And I'm very excited for the community college leadership program to be under your guidance, because it's a very significant program for the future of community colleges. So congratulations. And at this time, I would like to call upon the students from Chandler Gilbert Community College to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one substitution tonight. Dr. Eddie Lamperez, Vice President of Academic Affairs at Paradise Valley Community College, representing Jana Schwartz. Before we move on to the student life reports, I have a presentation that I would like to make to Susan Bittersmith in recognition of 2 years of outstanding service to this board, including providing critical leadership in the passage of Prop 486, which made our discussion of the budget this afternoon very different than it would have been had that not happened. So, Susan. We have a beautiful plaque from the Maricopa Community Colleges with our deepest appreciation, Miss Susan Bittersmith, in recognition of your guidance, active leadership, and commitment to serving as the board president of Maricopa Community College's District Governing Board, 2024 through 2025. Thank you. And now we're ready for the student life report. And if you would please introduce yourselves. Oh. My goodness, who do we have here?
This is Cody the Coyote. Our
Cody
mascot.
the Coyote. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Gonzalez, members of the Shared Governance Council, and guests. My name is Cash Pace, and I am the student body president at Chandler Gilbert Community College. I'm grateful for this opportunity to discuss what Associated Students of Chandler Gilbert Community College, or ASCGCC, has been up to this past semester and what is to come. First, I wanted to wish you all a happy Teal Tuesday. Every Tuesday on campus, the student and staff body wears teal to show our Coyote pride. Cody the Coyote brought some swag bags so you can celebrate with us every Tuesday. What was that, Cody? Hell yeah. Could we please go to the next slide? Everything ASCGCC has done was done with support by Cody Crossland, my vice president, Anna Gonzalez, the treasurer, along with other representatives and commissioners. Next slide, please. This year as president, I had an area I wanted to focus on: mental health and social advocacy. Mental health struggles affect people of all ages, though many people lack the education and support they need to navigate trying times. Anything I can do to change that is worth all the hard work. During the fall semester, ASCGCC planned a Narcan and overdose awareness event that featured a keynote speaker from Community Bridges Incorporated. They discussed how to use Narcan, which is an opioid overdose reversal medicine, how to support and find help to those struggling with drug use, also how it can be used to save someone's life. At the end of the event, everyone got a Narcan kit that contained 2 doses and any other items you may need when saving someone's life. This semester, we are planning the 3rd annual Suicide Prevention Walk that will feature student presentations and a keynote speaker. Later on, we will host a mental health focused panel, a women's self-defense class, and lots of other fun activities for students on campus. Next slide. I want to thank you for your time. You will now hear from 2 student leaders on campus: Tommy Weiser from the Heat Club and J. Lori Chargalev from the ASL Club, who will share about their impacts their clubs have made on campus and in the community. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Tommy. I've been at Chandler Gilbert for 3 years now. I'm majoring in biomedical engineering, and I'm planning on transferring to ASU this fall. That being said, I am also the proud to say that I'm the president of the Chandler Gilbert's Heat Club, or the Humanitarian Environmental Action Team. Thank you. And then next slide, please. So growing up, the global climate crisis has always been very relevant to me. Having a lot of family in Thailand, where these issues are very real to them in their lives, I see how they're affected by it, and in return, made me extremely passionate on the matter. However, I've never actually had the opportunity to be a part of any real solutions. This was until I found Heat Club. Heat has been a place where I can take my core principles and beliefs about the environment and turn them into actions, though be it at a local scale. Heat Club has been a wonderful first step in pursuing my future goals. So what is it that we do? Next slide, please. So last semester, we partnered with an organization that replants saguaro cacti around the valley, around places that have been affected by wildfires, which was pretty cool. We got our whole club out, about a dozen or so. We're able to do that. This semester, we were planning on several different trash cleanup events around the valley. And we also understand that in seeking solutions locally about the environment, we need to understand it. So that's where our ETC comes into play. On campus, we have our Environmental Technology Center, which is just a garden on campus where we can grow and nurture indigenous plants, so we can understand how we interact with them, how they interact with us, and what they need to thrive in just the valley. So, and that is our Heat Club. And now a word from the American Sign Language Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. Okay, again, hello, my name is J. Lori. I have been a student at CGCC since my freshman year of high school. I'm currently a business major, and thank you. I'm planning to transfer to Phoenix College to enroll in their interpreting program. I'm currently an ASL tutor at CGCC, as well as the secretary of American Sign Language Club. At CGCC, I had the amazing opportunity to take ASL as a language and an elective credit. And here's where I discovered ASL Club. So yeah, next, thank you. With ASL Club, our goal is to promote American Sign Language and spread deaf awareness across campus. We'd like to create and instill a connection with the deaf community. This semester, we'd like to establish an even bigger presence on campus, and we want to fundraise to eventually fund a trip to Washington, D.C. to visit the world's first and only deaf institution for higher education, and that's Gallaudet University. Last semester, we hosted our first fundraiser on Halloween, which was a car wash. Next slide, please. So our club hosts bi-weekly meetings where we discuss various topics. We ask that members put in topics they'd like to discuss, so we teach them those. We participate in monthly ASL socials, and we proudly represented CGCC at the Gilbert Market that now takes place on campus. So in conclusion, thank you so much for your time, for listening to all of our efforts on campus and in the community. This concludes our presentation, and happy Teal Tuesday.
Thank you so much. That was really very well done. Do the board members have any questions for the students or for Cody?
Sorry.
Dr. Narini.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. That was excellent. Are there any issues or concerns as students that you think the board needs to know about?
That's a really good question. Thank you. I think, I'm sorry.
Is there anything specific that you were really like trying to target?
Yeah, just like some of the concerns that students have in terms of, you know, getting to class or just kind of day-to-day activities and that sort of thing, that struggles that they may have that we need to know about.
On behalf of Heat Club, or just like a student in general, I feel like Chandler Gilbert is very accommodating to all of students' needs with Coyote Cupboard. We do the food drive that's like just smack dab in the middle of the campus, so everybody like is aware of it. I find that just different events or organizations are very easily accessible, just with flyers everywhere, just constant announcements. I think word travels really quickly, and I think it's honestly very tight knit at Chandler Gilbert. So it's just, if there is a problem with that any student has, it's like just solved like really quickly.
Well, thank you.
I agree. And as I mentioned, I know mental health and social advocacy is a big concern for ASCGCC. And I know we have a wonderful counseling department. I know the deans and the vice president and President Worcester are always ready to listen. And we have these meetings with students and staff on campus, and it allows any problems we have to be able to be brought up. And so I know that if there are any problems here, I trust that the staff on campus will be able to bring it to you guys. And so I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis.
My question is, what would you say is the percentage of students on your campus that are engaged in some of these activities?
I would say that roughly maybe a little less than half. I know that most people are not most people, but I know a majority, a large amount of people are online, and that really, like just inhibits a lot of involvement that they can have. A lot of my friends that I've met elsewhere that tell me that they go to Chandler Gilbert say they mainly take online classes or they're just in and out. But yeah, and it took me a while too to get involved, but I don't think that's like an issue on like your side. I think that like everything is out in front of us, so it's up to us to like interact.
And tomorrow and Thursday, we are hosting a club fair. And I know a lot of the people who have come to our club, as the person who is Cody Coyote has joined us. And so many kids come into our student pavilion and learn about these clubs. And so I think if not all people are involved. They still have an opportunity, and we have weekly flyers that go out. So I don't think it's a problem of awareness. I think it's more of a personal choice. But I think we're definitely pushing hard. ASCGC plans these club fairs, and we go a lot of thoughts on what tables are going to be where, so we can have who's going to be greeted first, so we can have more people join these clubs.
Pamela Smith.
So my question is, I know that you stated how you were an online student, you had a little bit of hesitation. You know, at once I was also an online student, and so I know how it felt to kind of not get involved at first, and then now I'm very involved. So tell me, what prohibited you to, or what was that change that made you get more involved?
Like I started thinking towards the future, like I hear a lot of people in the field that I want to go to in engineering say how these students come out of university or undergrad and they have no real world experience. So after putting that into account, I was like, oh, maybe I should get involved. So the first thing I do is I look towards what programs my school provides, and then I just went from there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again. And you certainly are welcome to stay for our entire meeting. However, we recognize that this is the beginning of the spring semester and you probably have a lot to do. So if you need to leave, you will not offend us. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we have something unusual tonight. A combined faculty executive council, adjunct faculty group, and staff representation report. Stacy, Kim, Jason, and Tony.
Good evening, President Thor, members of the board, Chancellor, and members of the Shared Governance Executive Council. My name is Jason Ritz. I'm here speaking on behalf of staff. I also have other reps between the other employee groups behind me. Next slide, please. So tonight we are working together in a combined fashion to talk about attracting and retaining the best talent for our district. Next slide, please. So right now, there are about 7 generations that are going on that all have their own unique needs. About 6 of those are currently represented in our student base and in our employee base, with another generation coming within the next 10 years. Some of those students are already starting to dip into some of our classes. Now, in our district, we have roughly 12,000 employees that comes and goes depending on where we are in the year, how many classes are going, with over 7,000 of those being part-time employees, the rest being made up and with full-time employees. And just standing in front of you in this group, we have over 6 decades of experience. So a lot comes into the district trying to represent all of these different viewpoints, making sure we have a place for employment that attracts and serves to all of them.
Great. President Thor, members of the board, Dr. Gonzalez, members of the Shared Governance Executive Council, and guests. My name is Stacy Smith. I'm the residential faculty member at Paradise Valley Community College and the Faculty Executive Council president. And I'm going to give you a few stories of faculty and the things what brought them to the district and why they have stayed here. So I'm going to start with a quote from Professor Julia Judson Garcia. She's here tonight in the back. She teaches math at Chandler Gilbert and is the current Faculty Senate President-elect. She shares, before coming to Chandler Gilbert, I taught at ASU for 6 years. While I valued the experience, the Emporium-style model of teaching 4 sections of 120 plus students, pre-calculus and calculus, I can't imagine that, made it difficult to build meaningful relationships or engage with students. After seeking advice from colleagues at both institutions, I was convinced that Maricopa would allow me to support research-based practices that center on student learning in a way that aligned with my values. Since joining Chandler Gilbert 5 years ago, I have been given countless opportunities to grow as a faculty member. I have been encouraged and supported and trusted by the people I work with, many of whom saw leadership potential in me before I fully saw it myself. Sometimes I joke that they encouraged me because they didn't want the job, but truly that support made all the difference. She continues, I choose to serve in faculty leadership because I want to give back the support I've received. That culture of support, strengthened by the leadership President Worster has fostered in a short amount of time, has continued to transform Chandler Gilbert into an exciting and meaningful place to work. That culture is why I stay and why I believe this district attracts and retains faculty who want to make a meaningful, lasting impact. Just as importantly, the district attracts and retains talent because the district stands firmly behind faculty rights and professional standards through the Residential Faculty Agreement. The RFA is the district's commitment to academic freedom, peer review, shared governance, due process, tenure, and professional growth. It sends a clear message to current and prospective faculty that Maricopa values their expertise, their judgment, and their voice. So when faculty are trusted to make decisions grounded in disciplinary expertise and without undue restraint, they are able to teach with integrity, confidence, and accountability. Dr. Dwayne Desbian, professor of physics at Estrella Mountain, recently received the Melba Newell Phillips Medal from peers in his field. The medal is awarded very infrequently. Only 18 people have earned it since 1982. And it's given to individuals whose careers reflect the namesake's commitment to advancing physics education and leadership. Dr. Desbian shares why he joined the district. I was a faculty at a small community college in Kansas when I decided to get my PhD in physics education research at ASU. While at ASU, I was asked to adjunct at Chandler Gilbert. Between my time in Kansas and at Chandler Gilbert, I knew I wanted to return to a community college when I finished my PhD. I was hired to begin the Estrella Mountain program essentially from scratch as the first residential faculty ever at Estrella Mountain in physics. What has attracted me to stay in Maricopa is the pay, especially 25 years ago when I started, as we were among the highest in the country, the benefits, the professional growth and travel funds, my colleagues, and the ability to make a real impact in students' lives. He continues, as I finish my 25th year at EMCC, I am completely happy with my decision to join the district. Were there times I was tempted to leave and look at greener pastures? Of course, but in the end, the students, my colleagues, and the support I have received to try new and innovative things is what kept me here. Similarly, Professor Brian Woodrum, professor of chemistry at Chandler Gilbert and current faculty senate president, shares his journey to Maricopa, and he's also here tonight. I think Maricopa chose me. I was teaching at ASU for 2 years when an ASU colleague alerted me to an open faculty position at Chandler Gilbert. Taking the job was not a decision I made lightly, as I am a biochemist and that's 300 level material and above. The pay was a minor factor, although I believed in annual steps at the time, and I spent a lot of time talking to mentors at ASU about the decision. So it was a leap of faith coming to Chandler Gilbert, and I believe I stayed because of the people. I've always felt supported here in all things teaching, by colleagues, by our Center for Teaching, Learning, and Assessment, by access to professional development. But Chandler Gilbert has also chosen me as a leader and has supported me in every leadership endeavor they've asked me to take on. I choose to stay and lead because of the people. I stay because of the community and care that exists at our college. And I lead because the community has put its faith in me and they deserve the best leadership I can provide them. So the district chose me and I'm trying to live up to and honor that choice. It is clear that the quality and high standards are what we stand for at Maricopa, and that is evident in our faculty body. Some faculty have served the district for decades, while others are just beginning their story as residential faculty. One more quote. Professor John Richardson, professor of English at Phoenix College, shares, I am proud to be a member of the faculty at Maricopa. I have served for over 50 years, working to portray excellence in the classroom and to stimulate excellence in my students. Having served on hiring committees numerous times, I am committed to securing the very best, most qualified faculty members possible. I am confident that we have succeeded and will continue to do so. As an aside, Professor Richardson has donated blood more than 240 times for a total of more than 30 gallons. Over the past 5 decades. That's a lot. So at the expense of a bad joke at this late night, faculty truly give their blood, sweat, and tears for their passions. So to wrap up, faculty come to Maricopa and stay because of the students we support, the communities we serve, and the values we uphold. Many thanks to the governing board, to you all, for remaining committed to these values, which ensures that Maricopa remains the destination for the very best in higher education. Thank you.
Good evening, President Thor,
esteemed governing board members, Chancellor Gonzalez, members of Shared Governance Executive Council, and any guests. I'm Kim Bosch. I'm the Adjunct Faculty Group President, and I'd like to tag along with some of the things that Stacy started and give some other perspective on things as well. As leadership for our employee groups have been meeting, we've been having discussions about the commonalities of our experiences and how we can work together to help the district and to help our individual groups. We've been discussing the people and culture that make up Maricopa County Community College District, along with how we are attracting and retaining the best talent for the district. We've discussed everything from email fatigue, employee engagements, benefits, and how we can bring the best experiences for students. We don't have all the answers, but we are engaging and with committee work and also going out to help to decide how to move forward. So in regards to adjunct faculty population, I have some data to share. We're waiting on the newest data right now for 2026, but the data from spring of 25 showed that the median tenure of adjunct faculty is 5.75 years. Although it varies across the district from 2.95 at South Mountain to 7 at Rio. Rio and Estrella Mountain show the highest tenure among adjuncts. The spring data from last year also showed roughly 4,000 total adjunct faculty across the district, and the makeup of the number between adjunct faculty and residential being roughly 75 to 77% adjunct and 25% residential, which supports the facts that were brought up earlier in the budget meeting saying we need to hire more residential. And also I know many adjunct faculty would like to become residential, so we want to work on that. Glendale shows the lowest percent of adjunct faculty, and South Mountain has the highest percent of adjunct faculty outside of Rio. I'd also like to share some information from the January 6th article in Forbes magazine called The Hidden Cultures Inside Organizations That Leaders Rarely Notice. This article has information that relates to the discussions that our employee groups leadership have been discussing. And to quote a few bullet points. Most leaders believe that they understand their organization's culture because they helped shape it. What often gets missed is how differently that culture is experienced across teams, roles, locations, and levels of power. Inside most organizations, there is not one shared culture, but many smaller ones operating at the same time. These co-cultures influence how messages are interpreted, which voices feel safe speaking up, and whether change feels meaningful or imposed. Culture can feel different depending on where someone sits in the organization. Someone on the front line who receives a message from leadership hears it while managing customers, schedules, and constant interruptions. Employees who have been in the organization longer often listen with more hesitation than those who are newer. Many efforts to implement change struggle because they focus on plans and timelines without enough attention to how that change affects everyone's daily work. Leaders often announce initiatives without fully considering the impact on workload. Alignment does not require everyone to agree, but it does require shared understanding. When leaders allow room for different perspectives, they will find their employees' commitment often grows. Organizations benefit when leaders recognize that all the co-cultures provide a source of insight. Their experiences can uncover risks earlier and point to practical solutions. These concepts apply to us as we analyze our employee groups and try to understand how to provide a better experience to make Maricopa a place that is desirable to be a part of, whether as employee or in attracting students. Lastly, in tagging on to what Stacy had said, in asking adjunct faculty what made you to choose Maricopa County and what makes you stay, I have a quote from Dawn Atwood, who's currently teaching at Glendale, has also taught at Phoenix, and has been a student at both Phoenix and Glendale. She said her 13 years teaching at Glendale, and she had student experiences both at Phoenix College and Glendale. They both felt warm and comfortable to me, and I stay because teaching is satisfying work, plenty of opportunity to grow, and enjoyable colleagues. I have a similar experience in that I've been with Phoenix College now for 17 years, since 2009. And I have felt very supported the whole way through. They give me opportunities to implement new techniques in my classes and work with my students in unique ways. And it's been a really wonderful community to be a part of. So I want to thank you for letting us share our combined report and for your continued support of our adjunct faculty and all employee groups.
President Thor, members of the board, Chancellor Gonzalez, SGEC colleagues and guests. Our employees are our greatest asset, including every one of you in this room tonight. As we look toward the future, one of our most important opportunities is learning how to communicate effectively across generations. Our newest employees have grown up in constant connection with the world, shaped by real-time conversations and rapid change. They communicate differently than many of us did in our careers, earlier in our careers. And that diversity of perspective is one of our greatest strengths. We are living now in an era defined by transparency, purpose, and intentional choices. Today's emerging workforce is thoughtful about where they invest their time, their energy, and their passion. If we want to continue to inspire our teams from within, we must be as adaptable, innovative, and forward-thinking as they are. The shift also means that building a long-term, deeply engaged workforce requires new approaches. Many of our younger colleagues are not seeking a 20-year career with a single organization. They share their workplace experiences with their network instantly, openly, and honestly. Imagine the possibilities if we could learn from that dialogue, if we could use those insights to tailor roles, remove barriers, and create an environment where people feel truly seen and supported. To do that, we must be willing to rethink what engagement looks like, and explore fresh, creative ways to connect. One example is staff representation. It has been challenging to find individuals willing to run simply because many employees don't even know we exist. No volume of email can build sense of community or visibility we need. That is why I've committed to meeting this challenge head on. I'll be visiting campuses at least once a month to personally connect with staff, listen to their stories, and share the work we are doing on their behalf. We have an extraordinary well of knowledge, passion, and experience across this organization, and I intend to lean on all of you as partners in lifting this work to new heights. Tonight, I want to thank the board for their unwavering commitment to keeping employees at the center of every decision. And I look forward to sharing the progress we make together throughout the rest of my tenure as co-president of staff representation. The future is bright and will be built by all of us. It is my distinct pleasure now to introduce the Estrella Mountain, Chandler Gilbert. I know, it's been one of those weeks. Getting everything. Chandler Gilbert, staff representation. I know.
Good evening, Governing Board and guests. My name is Megan, and I am the Senator for Staff Representation. And behind me tonight, I have Shannon, Leslie, Anna, and Chris. We are all brand new this year reps for the first time. And we are the first to have all of our seats filled for this staff representation. Next slide, please. Here are a few things that we have been going through in the initiatives. We've been involved in this college-wide initiatives with CGC. The slide is showing areas that we have provided a staff voice with major decisions. We recruited all 15 seats that were asked of us to serve on the 3 interest councils for our shared governance. Next slide, please. Here are a few highlights that we have done throughout the semester. Our main goal for this year is to raise awareness on both Pecos and Williams campuses. And we're hoping that by doing this, we will be able to move into this semester with a little bit more knowledge than we had the first semester. That's all I've got, so thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Yes, very well done. Thank you very much. And thanks also to the combined councils on a very interesting and uplifting presentation. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Dr. Gonzalez, we're ready for the Chancellor's report.
Thank you, President Thor. Let's see here. First of all, thank you for the acknowledgement of the change that's coming. There'll be many opportunities to say the final goodbyes, but for today, it's been pretty emotional state of sort of sadness and excitement all balled into one. I can say this though, that Maricopa is well poised to attract top talent to the system, particularly for this position. That I would not be surprised at all with this very strong pool for you to have a really tough job to identify the next chancellor from a strong pool. We've got higher caliber faculty and staff, a very top-notch administrative team across the system. So Maricopa is ready to leap into the future. I'm really excited for Maricopa. I promise to stay committed. What wasn't clear in the messages that went out, and I didn't think about it until afterwards, but everybody's telling me, have fun in Kansas, good luck in Kansas. Like, no, I'm staying in Arizona. I get to do the job from here. So I will continue to have a vested interest in the state of Arizona and all the work that not only Maricopa does for workforce education and, traditional transfer education, but just for just for the betterment of the state overall. So I hope to remain involved as much as I can in those continued conversations. So again, I look forward to an opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about what that means. There's two segments to my presentation. And the first one is an opportunity for you to learn a little bit about opportunities. This is an effort that is currently underway in conjunction with the Aspen Institute and the Maricopa Community Colleges. At least 3 of the colleges in the system were selected to participate in this. So to come up, I'm going to ask Dr. Eddie Lamperez, who's filling in for Dr. Jenna Schwartz today. Dr. Amy Diaz and Dr. CJ Worster are going to come up and present Unlocking Opportunities.
Surprise, Eddie, you're not presenting tonight. So that was a
That
little
explains
shock
his look.
for him.
That
Yes.
explains his look while I was saying that. Yeah.
So President Thor, governing board members, Chancellor Gonzalez, CGEC colleagues and guests, Dr. Worster and I are excited to present on Aspen's Unlocking Opportunity Network experience on behalf of our colleague, Dr. Schwartz, who could not be here tonight, and on behalf of Chandler Gilbert Community College, Gateway Community College, and Paradise Valley Community College, in addition to the entire system. Next slide, please. The Unlocking Opportunity Network is defined on this slide as pulled directly from Aspen's website, but I will read it. Unlocking Opportunity intensively engages community college leaders and teams over multiple years to develop and enact bold reforms focused on increasing the number of students entering and completing high-value community college programs. The project's central goal is to ensure that more students complete programs that lead directly to jobs that pay a sustaining wage or to transfer and completion of a bachelor's degree. And that link at the top, the words at the top should be a link if you have this electronically and you would like to click on that to learn more. This is one of the many programs sponsored by Aspen's College Excellence Program. Most noteworthy is the biennial Aspen $1 million prize competition for all community colleges across the nation that occurs in odd-numbered years. Next slide, please. The Unlocking Opportunity Network began in 2023 with 10 pilot colleges. Together, the 10 pilot colleges developed 8 unique strategies that exemplify the work and the impact of the network on their colleges, students, and communities. I'll highlight the 8 strategies just really quickly. We anticipated that you might want to know what those are. So they range from devising strategies to expand and diversify high-value programs, strengthen and expand healthcare programs so that all pre-health students have a pathway to a credential tied to a good job. Strategies that strengthen low opportunity workforce programs. Strategies that accelerate bachelor's attainment. connecting general studies to pre-major programs for students who might enter our institutions as undecided majors, redesigning program onboarding to increase and accelerate enrollment in high-value programs, connecting dual enrollment students to high-value pathways, and to devise concrete strategies to enroll adult students in short-term credentials of value with ladders. Of particular interest on this slide is that Southwest Wisconsin Technical College was the 2025 Aspen $1 million prize winner, hence bolded in blue. Next slide, please. During early fall of 2025, Aspen accepted 55 additional community colleges to their original network of 10. You can see here that Chandler Gilbert Community College, Gateway Community College, and Paradise Valley Community College were 3 of the additional 55 colleges. Another important note is that upon recognition that some, but not all of the Maricopa community colleges had applied to the network, and unfortunately we realized this after the deadline to apply, the chancellor and 2 of our college presidents reached out to Josh Weiner at the Aspen Institute to request that our entire set of 10 colleges be considered as one applicant to join the network. After review of all the applications and some additional level of consideration, Josh and his Aspen team determined that they could not accommodate our request at this time. Instead, he encouraged the 3 Maricopa colleges to participate fully in year 1, which we are doing now, and you'll hear just a little bit more about that momentarily, and that we could revisit our request in year 2. While having all 10 colleges participate in the network is potentially on the table for next year, you'll hear from Dr. Wooster regarding what we decided to do in the meantime.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz. And good evening, President Thor, members of the governing board, Chancellor Gonzalez, members of SGC, colleagues, and guests. I'm CJ Wooster, proudly serving as the president of Chandler Gilbert Community College. And I have to say happy Teal Tuesday, or the vice presidents and faculty leaders that are here might run me out of here. So happy Teal Tuesday. You know, in looking at this slide, some of the exciting and appealing opportunities, no pun intended, to join and apply for the Unlocking Opportunity Network is that the work included is actually aligned with a lot of national work and work that we're already engaged in or we will be engaged in as a system. Some examples of that are on the slide, such as Aspen Community College Vision 3.0, which I'll speak of on a subsequent slide. The work that's been happening nationwide and certainly within Maricopa related to guided pathways, and the work happening, for example, at Phoenix College, who's a part of the Achieving the Dream Network. So there's some national alignment. There's also alignment directly into our Maricopa work, such as the Chancellor's strategic vision statements. And we also believe that the work that will happen through Unlocking Opportunity will have an opportunity to inform system-wide planning in the areas of academic program offerings, workforce development initiatives and activities, and as well as informing even facilities renovation and expansion as part of our overall planning as we look to the future. Next slide, please. So an overview of some of the nuts and bolts related to the Unlocking Opportunity program. It's a program that was developed with between Aspen and the Community College Resource Center. And there's a significant focus on post-completion outcomes. So this is where that Community College 3.0 vision comes in again. So Vision 1.0, if you will, from Aspen was related to access. 2.0 was related to access and completion, and 3.0 is really access, completion, and then post-completion success. So in essence, what the goal is to leverage strategies to increase the number of students who are entering the workforce in good jobs, and also increasing the number of students who are transferring to university partners or earning a bachelor's degree, certainly through Maricopa as well. There's a 3-year commitment related to the program, but it's really important to give context to that this isn't just a 3-year project. The intent is to have transformational work that can really be scaled and continue for long-lasting improvements, not just for a 3-year kind of start and end cycle. It's also important to note that there's very limited cost to participate. There may be some travel for some gatherings along the way over this 3-year period, but for the most part, the project's made possible through partners that Aspen has identified, such as Arnold Ventures, Ascendium Education Group, Bank of America, ECMC Foundation, and JP Morgan Chase. Next slide, please. Excuse me. We wanted to give a little bit of update on what work is underway with our college teams. Aspen has been very clear that there must be a significant commitment from the college presidents, and Dr. Diaz, Dr. Schwartz, and I are all certainly in line with that as we move forward. But we're also fortunate to have 3 very engaged team leads in each of our colleges, and Dr. Lamprez is one of them. Ms. Bettina Sellis is also a team lead, and Mr. Matt Ashcraft as well. So we've got great project leads that are helping to move this work forward at the colleges. Some of the work that's been underway through the fall semester, we've engaged in some intensive data analysis. And so there's certain data sets and requests that we had to fulfill for Aspen, and we did that towards the end of the fall semester. And we received that data back to do some review over program-related data, workforce data, and the like, so we could continue on in this process. We were also asked to set a living wage for the region. And where this is important is because after we have the living wage set, then you begin to classify programs against that living wage. So from programs that may lead to low wage outcomes, middle wage outcomes, or the high living wage outcomes. We also are asked to classify programs related to transfers. So there's an interest in identifying those programs where there's minimal credit loss for students that do choose to transfer on to a university partner after they complete with us. And then, of course, accelerating bachelor degree attainment within Maricopa as well. So our next steps are to identify strategy areas and create quantitative goals. We'll be engaged in that work through the remainder of this spring semester. Our hope is to establish likely 3 to 5 goals per college, but we have a significant interest in establishing at least one common goal across all 3 Maricopa colleges that are participating in the Unlocking Opportunity Network, with an eye towards potentially scaling the outcomes from those goals across our system with our colleagues. So we're very excited about the work. We're excited about the progress we've made so far and the opportunity to be engaged in this network. And Dr. Diaz and I are happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions from board members? We'll do Jacqueline Smith first.
That's okay. I'm not just a one-trick pony, but I will ask a fundraising question. Is that part of the curriculum, learning about fundraising? And if not, I have a follow-up.
President Thor, Ms. Smith, to our current knowledge, it is not.
My follow-up is that on your slide 6, that's a really nice assortment of funders in the higher ed space that have decided to fund this program. And I'd be happy to discuss with you the ways to follow up potentially with those funders, to send them a really nice document about all the wonderful things you've learned in the program, et cetera, et cetera. Congratulations on being a part of this cohort, and thank you for your update.
Ms. Sullivan.
Congratulations to all of you for being accepted in the program. It's great. Going back to an earlier statement where you said you suggested that all 10 colleges be participative in this, did you get feedback as to why they felt they weren't ready for that?
President Thor, Mrs. Sullivan, we did. Once they looked at all of the applicants who had met the deadline requirement, there were many more than 55. In fact, I think they were scheduled to only select 50 and selected 55 as it ended up being for the team. And because they already had identified the amount of money that they had from the funders, they realized that they couldn't add 7 more in addition to the already 5 more that they had overpromised, if you will.
And is there an opportunity in the next cycle to embrace the remaining 7 colleges? Did you get a sense of that?
I may defer to the chancellor. I think he may have had a more detailed conversation with Josh Weiner on this particular idea.
Yes, President Thor, Mrs. Sullivan, Amy is correct in her response. The additional opportunity, as she stated earlier was that they would like to revisit that conversation at the conclusion of this first
Excellent.
year. Right now, the three colleges are also thinking about their approaches and the train-to-trainer approach, and Aspen is fully aware of that. So we think that they're going to rely on us to perhaps um, take a larger role in internal support and then becoming a part of the larger group.
Excellent.
And then, of course, they could provide some additional support to help make up some of
That
the
works.
differences.
That's good.
They're very interested. It's exactly what she said. They exceeded the number of people that had applied originally, and also the amount of funding and staff available to support all of the selected colleges and systems across the country.
Looking at the list of colleges, it would seem so far they've not really considered a huge system in their acceptance of people. So we would be cutting edge in that regard too. Well, as I'm just quickly looking through there. So to that point, I just want to say an anecdote. Several of us are heading to DC in a week, and we sit on certain committees. And I remember being in committees where we each have to introduce ourselves. And there are a couple that say, and we're the $1 million prize recipient. And I'm really looking forward to the day where I could say, and we're the $1 million recipient. So congratulations, good luck with the effort. And I hope that all 7 or 10 someday can be participative in the same way. Thank you.
President Thor, may I add one comment to the
Mhm,
question?
please.
We're just realizing now in going through what is a workshop of sorts with a coach that Josh Weiner and his team recognized that it would benefit the 3 colleges and the entire system if we all had the same coach. So we are all assigned to the same person. So this one woman knows what we are trying to do to scale the best practices that we identify across the system. So I thought that added to the answer.
Anyone else?
My question, well, first of all, I would like us to win 20 of those prizes, and then we don't have to do any tuition or tax increases. So can you work on that for us, please? But my question for the two of you is, what is the one thing that you have learned that has surprised you the most? Is there anything that you've learned that has been the most surprising?
President Thor, Ms. David, I think that it's been going through the data analysis that we engaged in the fall semester has been, I think, tremendous for our team. We've engaged with our President's Leadership Council. We've engaged with some of our faculty leadership, our chairs, our administrators at the college, and we're just starting to, we're in the beginnings of what I think are going to be some really, really productive discussions, because we're looking at the data and we're asking these questions, and it's more, let's find out more. Let's dig into this a little bit more. So I don't know that I have a solid answer of that, that learning outcome right now, other than kind of the excitement that I have for where our discussions are going, and just the progress I think we're really going to make. So I'm very encouraged by that.
President Thor and Ms. Davis, one of the things that you also do in getting ready to engage in the work is you learn from the 10 pilot colleges. And while the work that they have done is fascinating, and it does define the 8 strategies, of which you're at least encouraged to consider which of the 8 you might identify, 2 to 3 per college. When I was listening to the colleges talk about some of the strategies, I thought, there's nothing more special about them that isn't special about us. We just have to have the will to do it, right? So those 10 colleges that were on that one slide, it could be our 10 colleges. We just have to be willing to actually do the work and have the conversations, and then fulfill the promise of doing the work after.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations. And we'll look forward to hearing back from you again on the progress that you make. Dr. Gonzalez, your
Yes,
update?
thank you, President Thor. Continuing with my presentation, I'll start with Happy Teal Tuesday. And hell yeah, I'm ready to give this report. So in honoring our Chandler Gilbert students this evening, here's some more college specific data and some highlights to share with you. So Chandler Gilbert continues to see enrollment growth this semester, and which includes a more than 25% increase in full-time students from spring 2025 to spring 2026. This growth reflects the success of the college's strategic scheduling efforts to better align course offerings with student demand and timely pathway completion. Chandler Gilbert continues to advance this strategic priority of increasing college going among high school students, in addition to hosting Chandler Early College High School on its Pecos campus through a partnership with Chandler Unified School District. Chandler Gilbert's high school embedded college advisors are demonstrating measurable success with 867 students earning 12 or more college credits this academic year. In support of Maricopa's vision to lead in workforce development, Chandler Gilbert partners with industry through business and industry leadership teams, which are also known as BILTs, which bring faculty and employers together to align curriculum with rapidly evolving skills and technology. This model is guiding the development of new programs at the Arizona Commerce Authority, supported Aerospace and Defense Accelerator at the Williams campus, as well as in artificial intelligence, and has been well received and appreciated by partners. Through the City of Chandler Internship Partnership, 130 internships have been produced, with nearly 1/3 leading to city employment. And lastly, I'm pleased to recognize the work of Chandler Gilbert's commitment to service, recognizing that in the last year, more than 2,000 students, faculty, and staff contributed 13,000 plus service hours in support of their community. Good job, Chandler Gilbert. As far as system is concerned, spring 2026 headcount is 88,000 students, which is up 6.1% from this time last year. And spring 2026 total attempted hours is 730,315, which is also up 6.2% from this time last year. In terms of legislative update, the session began on Monday, January 12th. Some of us have attended some of the various legislative openings that have taken place around the valley. Maricopa County Community Colleges has one priority this session, and that's the restoration of operating aid funding, and we recognize the challenge that comes with that, but we will continue to push. And our government relations team and leaders from across the district attended several legislative kickoff events. I know I already said that, but I just read it again. And CJ, here's one that I haven't heard of yet. You're welcome to copyright it. All right. So this concludes my remarks with a hell yeah. Until next time. All right. That's it, President Thor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. This now brings us to Citizens Interim. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the governing board. In compliance with the open meeting law, the governing board will neither discuss nor take action on issues raised during this portion of the agenda. Members of the public who speak shall not engage in conduct that substantially interrupts, delays, or disturbs the peace and good order of the proceeding of the board, including but not limited to the use of profane language or obscene gestures, yelling or similar demonstrations, hand clamping, stomping of feet, or the excessive use of noise. Such actions may serve as cause for the board's president to direct that the speaker immediately conclude his or her remarks. Ms. Macias, do we have any public comments? We have none. Thank you. We now move to the consideration of consent agenda items. All items under this section of the agenda are consent matters unless they are removed from the consent agenda at this time. Do any board members or the chancellor wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. All those in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By a vote of 7-0 and our student advisory vote, the consent agenda is approved. We're now at non-consent action items. Is there a motion to adopt the proposed new governing board policy 4.1, board policy adoption, revision, and maintenance, which incorporates the proposed governing board policy framework?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bittersmith. Are there any questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By a vote of 7-0 and the student advisory vote, the proposed new governing policy 4.1 board policy adoption, revision, and maintenance with proposed governing board policy framework is adopted. Item 2, is there a motion to adopt proposed new governing board policy 10.1 on acceptable use?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Narini. Is there a second?
Second.
You got to be faster with that button. Seconded by Ms. Sullivan. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? By a vote of 7-0 and the student advisory vote, the proposed new governing board policy 10.1 acceptable use is adopted. Item 3, approval of implementation of a new salary schedule for certified peace officers in the police officer job series. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Bittersmith. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Dr. Narini
We'll give
beat
it
you
to
this
him.
time.
Go for it.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the new salary schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By a vote of 7-0 and the student advisory vote, the proposed new salary schedule for certified peace officers in the police officer job series is adopted. We now move to first read and information items. The first item is employment and separations from November 8th, 2025 through December the 5th, 2025. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we move to the first read of the proposed tuition and fee schedule for fiscal year 2026 to 2027. Board members, any questions, comments, discussion? Okay. We're now at monitoring reports. The board, the budget analysis report for general fund for the 6 months ending December 31st, 2025. Any comments or questions? We're now at community linkage. Ms. Pamela Smith, do you have anything to report?
I do. Thank you, Dr. Thor. So recently, I'm just in the process of meeting with our Student Life and Leadership Council. So I'm pretty packed in February, which is a great thing, to discuss the Student Trustee Initiative. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to being able to present more. And then officially, I did graduate last semester with distinction. So I'm looking forward to walking across the stage this upcoming May. And then I'm continuing on with my degree for my bachelor's program. That is all. Thank you. That is all I have to report.
Thank you, Ms. Bittersmith.
Thank you, President Thor. The Chancellor mentioned legislative activities as the session started, and I was privileged to join other members of the board and the administration at the State Chamber's legislative forecast. The only downside to that was, of course, there was no mention of anything in the budget for community colleges, which would have been a really nice addition, but not to be at least this session. I then also participated in the Arizona Media Association legislative reception. I was there with legislators in my role having been a panelist on their education session that was filmed last fall. I then joined the distinguished members of the Scottsdale Community College team at the City of Scottsdale's Mayor's State of the State speech I do not know if Dr. Lashinsky wants me to comment on the content of that, but I appreciate being included. Always a fascinating event in Scottsdale, and I'm being very careful. So, the following day was able to join the Chandler Gilbert team at the 5-year celebration of their AI program, and in conjunction with recognizing the partnership there. I will say it was very gratifying to see that, because as CJ and I just talked about earlier, almost 5 years ago, the distinguished father and son team at Chandler Gilbert, who part of that AI presentation, got drafted to talk to a group of cable television operators that I work for, and they were incredible. And so this is now 5 years later, they are really part of that team. So very exciting to see them and see them recognized, but the whole team and the whole program recognized. And then finally, Dr. Gonzalez, I will tell you that I spent my last afternoon as the president of the board answering the telephone and emails over your announcement. Some of them were very upset. Actually, people were very unhappy and upset, but also excited for you. So my personal congratulations. But Dr. Thor, the phone calls are now coming to you. So have fun with that.
At least I don't have to do the chancellor's evaluation this year.
Same here, Dr. Thor.
And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Butler.
Thank you, President Thor. Back in mid-December, we had an Audit and Finance Committee executive session. If you aren't aware, I'm serving as the chair of that committee. Marie Sullivan is the vice chair. And then there are 3 community members who have great expertise in all matters financial and accounting. And we reviewed the draft annual comprehensive financial report for year end June 30, 2025. That final report is now available. We were reviewing the draft. The final report is now available. It's 114 pages, very detailed. And I think it highlights how transparent and accountable our system is, and how we are really, seeking and making sure that all of those reviews take place. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
So on the 12th of December, I attended the dental hygienist graduation at Rio Salado. And I sat next to a staff member from Rio Salado, and she said, "This is one of my favorite graduations because the families pin on the graduation pin for the dental hygienist." And I went, "Oh my gosh, do I have Kleenexes here?" So it was a very, very moving ceremony to watch those families. I mean, some of them were mothers and their children were pinning on their pins, and it was totally amazing. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to attend that. On the 8th of January, I went to the Arizona Career Pathways graduation. It was a small event because it rained, and we all know how Arizonans go out in the rain. It doesn't happen. So, but I so appreciate their efforts to support our students with the wraparound services that they provide. And I think it's so important. So I'm really glad that we're able to support that. And then on the 14th of January, I went to the West Valley State of the State luncheon and heard the governor's State of the State. So that was interesting. And I saw, a lot of people there that I knew. So that was kind of fun. And then my very favorite part of this job is running into students. And I was telling Julie that I had a student call me who's a fundraiser for an organization that I donated to. And she called to thank me for the donation. And we were talking, and she turned out to be a graduate of South Mountain in the bachelor's degree for behavioral health. And now she's doing fundraising for a local nonprofit. And I loved talking to her and hearing about how grateful she was to South Mountain for that opportunity. And then at the West Valley Governor's address, I ran into another student who saw my name tag and said, "Oh, you're with the community. I love the community colleges. They did so much for me." And I love those kinds of experiences. So thank you all for what you do, because it really is helpful for our community. And I know there's a lot of people out there that appreciate what you do. So thank you.
Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you, Dr. Thor. I did attend the Audit and Finance Committee meeting and really appreciate the comments of Ms. Butler. I would agree the hard work and the representation of the work is stellar, and we appreciate how you do your work in this area. Also attended the Arizona Career Pathways graduation, and some of you may know that I have a personal link to that program from when I was a CEO of an organization that we became the fiscal agent for that entity before it was able to stand on its own 2 feet. And it's just remarkable to see the work that they've continued to do over all these years, and really resonates with the power of longevity and commitment and all those good things they're doing on behalf of the families. And I appreciate the relationship with the Community College for Arizona Career Pathways. I also attended the State Chamber luncheon, and it was interesting to hear, political perspectives on future of legislation and where we stand financially in this arena, and can only suggest that we keep the good fight on the table for renewed funding for community colleges, and appreciate the relationships that all of you have developed over the years with our legislators to make them aware that community colleges in the higher education spectrum are incredibly important to our state, the workforce, et cetera, et cetera. And with that, few other AGB activities, and I and several of my colleagues here are heading to DC, where it's cold, probably next week, and we'll be participating in committees and listening to comment on higher education priorities. So that's where we are. And congratulations, Dr. Thor, again on your leadership. And gee whiz, Dr.
Thank you very
Gonzalez, I don't
much.
know what else to say. With that, I'm
For
done.
those going to DC, no falling, no slipping, no breaking any bones.
Yeah. Wow. Catapulting. We're
No
gonna put
catapulting.
We're putting cleats on our shoes. We'll stay. We won't leave. But maybe we should just.
Miss Smith.
No official business this month, but I did want to say a couple Saturdays ago, I attended a GEM show on the MCC campus with my son, and I really appreciated the opportunity to put the community in the community colleges. There was a tremendous turnout of folks who got to experience some public-facing opportunities on our college.
Great, thank you. Dr. Narini.
Thank you. I want to start by congratulating Dr. Gonzalez for his new moves, and Dr. Thor and Donna for your new roles. So congratulations. And I too attended the Arizona Career Pathway graduation celebration. That was a lot of fun, even though it rained. There was a lot of cupcakes left. A lot of cupcakes. I did my quota. So okay. Yeah. So good for you. And then I too will be going to Washington DC in a couple of weeks. So in preparation for that, I attended an ACCT legislative conference, virtual conference, to go over the federal legislative priorities that ACCT has. So when we lobby, the Congress people will know what we're talking about. So we have our nice green sheet. I don't know if everybody's got their green sheet. And the other thing, this is a real tribute to our staff. I attended Diane Martinez's retirement celebration at Phoenix College. And there was a representative from at least every college there. The impact that she's made across the district with students and other staff and the people that she's mentored and things. So I think that's just kind of goes to say the impact that our staff as well as our faculty have on not only our students but on each other. So they did a wonderful job with her. There you needed lots of Kleenex because lots of tears of joy were going on there. So with that, I conclude my report.
Thank you very much. For my report, I assume that there is a lot of interest and curiosity about the process that we're going to be using for selecting Dr. Gonzalez's successor. As he indicated in his announcement today, the governing board has decided that we will do a national search. It also will be a thorough but condensed search because it is our goal to try to complete at least the public facing parts of it before the end of faculty accountability, May 15th. So it's going to take a lot of intention to move it through that fast. I will share that prior to assuming the board presidency today, Board President Susan Bittersmith appointed me as the chair of the search committee. And Ms. Bittersmith will be joining me as well as the immediate past president of the board. And then our student board member, Pamela Smith, has agreed to represent students on the committee. In the next few days, heads of various constituent groups will receive communication from me about appointing your representatives to the committee. So in a few days, we will be sending out a district-wide announcement of, or at least an overview of the process and the timeline. So we appreciate everybody's support and cooperation. I should indicate that you also, in the not too distant future, will be getting a survey asking for your input on the opportunities and challenges facing the next chancellor, as well as helping us rank various qualifications and characteristics in terms of their importance to you. And then we will also be asking the search firm to conduct some number of forums to include at least one virtual forum to gain additional insights to your needs. So I was board president last in 2019. And in 2019, we also did a search for a chancellor. Was it 2020? Oh, yeah. I wasn't board president. You were board president. Yeah, you're the one who made me the chair. Yeah, so as some of you may recall, that turned out to be a failed search. So hopefully I'm going to do it better this time. Yeah, it wasn't my fault. Yes, thank you. With that, the establishment of the next meeting dates, times, and places. February 10th will be a virtual agenda review that will be immediately followed by a study session regarding board participation on committees and the open meeting law. On February 24th, 2026 will be our regular board meeting at 6:30 here at Rio Salado. That concludes our meeting. Thanks everyone for your time tonight. Let the record reflect that the board has adjourned this meeting at 7:52.